Did you tell your colleagues and your faculty that you are now working at OpenAI, or did you just leave the building and everyone thinks you're still a faculty here?
Well, I still am a faculty at MIT. I just want to make a point, just on leave, and very much appear still on the building. So don't tell my colleagues because they might not know, right?
Okay, all right, great. So your secret
yeah, of course,
is with us. And
both sides are aware.
Yeah, and we're simulcasting this throughout the building. So the 2,000 people that are listening to this, it's a secret. Everyone, shh. All right. Okay, so you're the head of preparedness. So who feels prepared for life? Who thinks OpenAI is prepared? All right, well, let's figure out what preparedness means. And Ramesh, you got a question for our distinguished colleague here?
And first of all, to have a fellow MIT professor looking at preparedness at OpenAI makes me feel a little more secure that the right people from MIT are working on preparedness at MIT at OpenAI. But also, I heard this joke, Alex, that the whole AGI scare was created 6 months ago so that OpenAI has an excuse to start an official computer science theory group at OpenAI, and you're kind of leading it. Is that correct?
No, essentially, the point is, I'm not sure this scare. I think there is a lot of people who are scared. Some of them, Jan is mentioning the doomers, so there are definitely a spectrum of concerns. I don't think that this is something that is at the core of being scared at the core of OpenAI is about, right? OpenAI is about understanding what this technology, what kind of opportunities technology brings. And in particular, my team Preparedness is about thinking, how do we prepare both at the company, but also how we help prepare the world for this technology that will change us, right? Will change how we live, will change how we work. This will be big changes, and just OpenAI wants to be the positive force in this space.
So Ramesh, you worked at Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, which is now Meta. You did what he did. You went on leave. Do you have a question not wearing your academic hat, but wearing your hat of big industry? You tell me every day how innovative and entrepreneurial these big bureaucracies are.
Thank you. Thank you. That was so honest. No, I think it's important for MIT professors to take some time off and share our wisdom, but also learn the wisdom from this other big tech companies.
You don't get paid on Fridays, right? Isn't that part of the deal?
Yeah,
that you're supposed to be externally focused?
Exactly.
And that goes for all faculty, in case you wonder if they're walking around with a cup saying, "Hey, it's Friday."
Yeah, we take the piece of MIT and we sprinkle it in all these places. So. But again, Alex, just popping up a level, US just announced kind of an AI safety task force. So if just walk us through how at the national level, at the big tech level, and at kind of a consumer level, we should be thinking about safety, AI safety.
Sure. So yes, US indeed just recently announced the US AI Safety Institute. So this is a very important initiative that I think I'm really hoping and want to do everything I can to make it successful. But yeah, so first of all, we definitely should think about AI safety. But I want to just make one point that I really think it's not just about safety. Again, that's why we use this word preparedness also, in addition to safety, because it's about just making sure that we prepare for the changes that come. This means making sure that the downsides that this technology can bring do not happen, but also that the upsides do happen. So I just want to view it as a bit broader lens here. But yes, this is definitely something that requires also attention at the national level, and I'm happy to see that the US government is recognizing that. And we need to think about many things. So on one hand, we want to understand, this is something that my team in particular focus quite a bit on, is understanding, okay, what are the new potential risks, catastrophic risks that increased capability that the technology bring about? And then how do we think about mitigating them? How do we make sure that our decision-making about whether we deploy the model or not at OpenAI, but hopefully also the same process happens in other companies, whether this is the right decision. But then again, this technology is diffusing everything one way or another. So we, especially government, should think about also Well, first of all, let's make sure that nothing bad happens, but also like, what does it mean for the labor market? What does it mean for for all these processes that we are doing? What this means for cybersecurity, and so on and so on. And these are kind of many of these questions are something that the government is in charge of. So I'm very happy to recognize that they recognize that this is part of their duty, and they're acting on this.
I'm going to ask two related questions. One is this confusion between explainability, reliability, auditability, and trustworthiness. I mean, the way I explain to people is, if somebody explains to me how a car works, every part of the car, that's explainability. And then when I start driving the car, I feel it's reliable. At some point, when I see all my friends and I see statistics in consumer reports that people are not dying for driving, then it becomes trustworthy. But at some time, things go wrong, and then it becomes auditable. So, is there a similar analogy you can give us from the AI point of view of how AI safety is actually made up of all these pieces, and it's careful. We have to be careful about which phrase is used in which aspect of AI.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I really like how you nicely dissect these four words that people sometimes use interchangeably, and they definitely shouldn't. I think actually your current analogy works quite well. The one thing that I just would want to I think the key difference in the cutting edge AI right now is that, well, I think if you have a bit of an engineering background, you will be able, with enough time, to understand how the car works, that how there is a combustion and it is changed to some force that moves the wheels and so on. So you will really understand what's happening. I think the level of complexity of the existing these large language models is completely escaping our cognitive abilities. So there's a bit of a false promise of explainability, because yes, at some point you will know exactly how the model works. Here is a number and here's a number, and it gets added up, and then you are applying really operations. So yes, so at this microscopic level you will understand, but it's much, much harder. In some sense, really, to some extent, you could think might be even impossible, or at least greatly constrained, if you really can understand what's actually happening here. And this actually ties to much of my work, which showed that the way AI solves problems, the way the models, AI models, solve problems, tends to be very different to us. So even if it tends to solve the task that we solve, let's say recognizing something in the images, the way they approach this task is very different. And this means that in the context of explainability, sometimes there are explainability methods that seem to give us a feeling as we know why the model did something, but actually it's only misleading because the actual reasons are different, but there's just some explanation for our consumption. So, but still, the analogy works, and I definitely would like to, in particular, highlight also the trustworthiness aspect. Yes, because we need to first of all define what reliability means, and depending on that, you can, AI is reliable right now, or maybe it's not reliable right now, and we can think where do we want to get there. But at some point, we will need to face the question of trustworthiness.
Alex, let me jump in with a question.
With using AI in our life, and then the question also will be auditability is a part of building trustworthiness.
So Alex, to what extent are you an X factor for your team? Or is there groupthink and everyone thinks alike? And are you creating a roadmap for your the charge that you're given? Or are you just sharing some things that people aren't thinking about? And I know you probably can't get into too many details here, but I'm just curious, as this new company at this time when people are having to figure things out that maybe hadn't had to be thought of with AI before, how are you approaching it? What can you share?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, definitely we are developing very exciting technology. I'm saying often that the privilege of being at OpenAI is that you can see into the future, but you can see for half a year or maybe at most a year into the future, right? So there are surprises for all of us, but the company cares a lot about understanding what's happening, both from the scientific level, but also from this safety preparedness level. Now, you mentioned something important, the groupthink. And in my team, which is in particular thinks about all the unwanted, undesirable consequences of AI, this is something that I make it very clear to everyone on the team, is that my biggest fear is exactly the groupthink, because there's a lot of groupthink even in the community, because people tend to talk to each other and they agree what the risks are. And to me in particular, I think there will be something negative, something catastrophic that AI will do in the future. And I hope, and I'm working hard to make sure this doesn't happen. It probably will be not the things that we are afraid of. It will be something completely different that we are not thinking about because we have not yet dug enough in understanding of all the subtleties and possibilities that AI brings up. So I always kind of drill it in my team, just saying, look, our most important things, we have some specific risk categories in something called preparedness framework, where we list kind of, okay, these are the things that we worry about, like cyber security, we worry about biorisks and other things, but we have also explicitly this process of unknown unknowns. And we are striving in different ways to make sure that we always change our thinking and see, okay, is there something we don't have there? Will we succeed? I hope we will, but at the very least, this is something that I'm very, very worried about and trying to work hard to make sure that exactly like, let's think outside of the box. Let's not make assumptions if we don't have to, and always kind of be doubtful. Like I always told to my team is that when we make some assessment, actually what I'm the most worried about, or kind of where we should really feel the biggest responsibility, is not where we find something troublesome, but when we actually don't find something troublesome. Kind of like we need to always try to second guess ourselves. Did we miss something? Is there something that we are not seeing that we should be seeing? So anyway, but that's a
so I asked you about a roadmap. Are you charged with creating a roadmap?
It's part culture, part technology to get there.
Alex, are you charged? I know when Ramesh was at Apple, he helped create a privacy roadmap. Are you charged with creating some sort of roadmap, or are you just there to think great thoughts?
Well, I definitely am a believer. I'm always aspiring to thinking great thoughts, but I really believe that these things like avoiding groupthink and so on, like you need some processes and frameworks to actually drive the right thinking, and making sure people like thinking about safety in particular is part of people's routine. Like that's something not just you do from time to time, but actually is part of like, even if you are working on developing better model, you are thinking about that. So to this extent, like one of the things that I kind of was part of impetus to create is something called Preparedness framework, which is actually public. You can read it, which exactly outlines how do we think about assessing this catastrophic risk, what kind of technical work we do, how do we also, and this is very important, how do we have a governance piece that helps feed this technical knowledge into our decision making about which model we are deploying, which model we are developing, and so on. So this is something that I thought is extremely important. I also do try to have a roadmap because preparedness is not only about things that are happening right now, but what is coming, what we should be preparing for. So I do have that, but I will not. I'm not sharing that.
Yeah. So Alex, for time, I want to just jump in here. So this is what I'd like. I want to tell you that later today we have Sean on stage. He graduated from MIT 5 years ago. He said his favorite class was yours. He's of course 6, and he just left OpenAI after being there for 3 years, like 3 weeks ago. And he's going to tell us about what it was like. And I'll ask him about you and see if he still likes you. But Ramesh, for the final question.
I still like him.
Yeah, okay, all right. So Ramesh, for the final question, can you ask him 3 questions and let's see which one he wants to answer. And then I'm curious to wrap this up. How are you using AI? How much of your software you're using are you using AI to code? Like what do you do? With AI to kind of experiment and get feedback on this technology today. But Ramesh, go, 3 questions.
So Alex, I mean, you're a computer scientist just like me, so it's more than just policy and frameworks and roadmap. Some of your recent work here at MIT talked about, the failure of the models comes mainly from domain shifts in the data, and you have done a lot of work on where pre-training could help, where fine-tuning could help. How does that dovetail with what's going on, thinking about AI risks in general? Because kind of model failure is just a tiny piece of it. That's kind of one question. The second question, and John, you would like to also hear this, everybody here, that OpenAI talks about preparedness, not in terms of risk mitigation, but risk creation. So a very specific word that OpenAI is using. They're preparing for risk creation tools, how to avoid risk creation, not risk itself. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on that. And the third one is what John asked, like how does this play out, for tools in AI in general?
So you don't have to answer all those, just pick one.
Sure.
Or none.
So let me try to actually answer all of them very quickly. So first of all, I do use AI, not really for coding because I don't do much coding anymore, but I do it for all these annoying things okay, there was a word I had in mind, and what is this word? Or essentially there is a PDF I want to parse, ChatGPT helps me with that. So I really use it, and it's interesting how much it's a part of my routine right now. I don't even notice it anymore. So I had to think for a moment to answer that. In terms of my background as a computer scientist, I think this is really important. Not that maybe specific research I did is immediately directly applicable to the setting which we are, but both the thinking, the kind of structural thinking about this technology helps, but also to be honest, being comfortable to have a very technical conversation with someone and kind of really understanding the underpinnings of technology and because of that, the corresponding risk, that's key. And that's, I think, hopefully something that positive that I can bring to this mission. Now, in terms of, I actually am not sure what you're referring to in terms of risk creation, so I will have to guess. Again, in some sense, when we think about the potential negative impacts of AI, which, by the way, I think there's lots of positive ones, but let's talk about negative because we want to make sure that we modulate and mitigate this. I think AI is really a reagent. It's just kind of an accelerant of certain already known risks. I think also there will be new risks, but in some sense, there will be also the old risks that are accelerated. So this is kind of what we are trying to understand. Is if we think about this accelerant of AI, which kind of makes everything different, how we want to really understand how the risk landscape changes as a result of this. So this means that you really need to understand, and I really always pitch my team that's saying, yes, you have this great mission, important mission, but also you will need to get extremely familiar with the absolute cutting edge of the technology that OpenAI is developing. So you are really kind of side with the people developing this, understanding what they are doing, because you need to understand how AI impacts things. And for that, you have to have the deep understanding of that, and then you know what are the new risks that emerge. So hopefully this answers your question.
Ramesh has one final question to the audience. Are you underwhelmed by Alex? Raise your hand. About what you expected, or you really, really like what he had to say, and you're glad he's working on preparedness? Okay. So Alex, I don't know if you can see, but a lot of people are happy about you.
Yeah. So I want to kind of channel Shantanu Bhattacharya, who's a scientist in our group. And he calls it kind of the Soviet model. And any centralization, eventually creates potential for catastrophic failure. And the way our society works is through decentralization. And his point is that if you just decentralize, things automatically become stable. The automatically becomes, they're cross-checking the references, and things reach an equilibrium. Do you have this debate? And I know your group and my group at MIT both work on decentralization. But at OpenAI, which is a highly centralized organization, do you think decentralization will be a way to bring some stability?
So I think this is an excellent question, and I think it's quite nuanced, because on one hand, to make progress on current AI, you need to have a lot of compute and a lot of focus, and that brings centralization. But yeah, there are these challenges that you are talking about. So this is, by the way, why OpenAI has such a unique structure. It's because this is a part of a thinking, okay, if we succeed, yes, if we create this great technology, what then, right? Does it mean we are all powerful? Should we be all powerful? Probably not, right? So there's a lot of thinking about that at OpenAI exactly. It's just saying, yes, there is some centralization that is needed to get the resources to really build the technology, but this question that you are raising and your project are raising are very valid, and definitely something we are thinking about. And again, our structure is one way of trying to address it. Probably we should think more, because it's a very difficult problem.
Alex, 5 stars. If you were an Uber driver,
yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
All right. Who knows?